Good morning once again. This is Father Simeon Gallagher, and we welcome you to these little homilies in preparation for the coming weekend. To situate the gospel in this coming weekend, it would be Jesus being asked by the Pharisees, what is the greatest of all the commandments? And by the time that this airs for your consideration, I will have been with 15 people in a very lovely visit, hopefully, uncomplicated visit to France, including Lisieux, where Saint Therese, the little flower as she's popularly known, was raised and spent most of her life as a Carmelite nun. She would have been forgotten had her sister not asked her to sit down and write an autobiography about her spiritual development. And in that little autobiography, we have the content of an incredible mind, an incredible spirituality, and yet at the same time, not complicated, but very direct and very simple. It's all about love. She said in the French, toujours l'amour. It's all about love. So when you listen with me this coming weekend to the gospel, we're told that the Sadducees tried to entrap Jesus in the cleverness of arguments, and he didn't even pay attention to them. He subverted, so to speak, sabotaged their questions, and now it's the time of the Pharisees. And one of them, teacher of the law, as we are told, asks Jesus, what is the greatest of all the commandments? I think the background, of course, is for us to realize that there were over 600 pieces of legislation. These covered everything from soup to nuts, as we would say. Prayer time, prayer forms, family utensils used at the table, the washing and the scrubbing of cups and bowls, etc., laws that regulated worship, laws that regulated sexual intercourse in marriages, and on and on. And so this young Pharisee asks Jesus the question, what is the greatest of all the commandments? Trying to, once again, entrap Jesus. And Jesus does not allow himself to descend to argumentation, which unfortunately often happens in the world of religion. We often turn acrimonious with each other, and that doesn't accomplish anything. Certainly it doesn't accomplish the outcome of what would be healthy religion and healthy religious attitudes. Jesus avoids all of that. In the gospel this morning that we will be listening to, he says, love the Lord your God with all your mind, your heart, your soul, and your strength. And then, wait a minute, the second commandment is as important as the first. Love your neighbor as well. And what would have been a contentious argumentation, what would have been a contentious discussion, if you can even call it that, it turns out not to be that at all. And Jesus is triumphant in the argument before the argument even begins. The little flower was presented with all kinds of systems of spirituality, but she chose what is called the little way. And the little way is to return to love, to return to love, to return to love. This is not an easy thing, of course. I'm aware of that. You're aware of that. Anybody who has been blessed with interpersonal relationships through the commitments that we have made in marriage and family and friendship, in the role of the friars living together in community, and as priests, some of us engage with people in parish work and educational situations and so forth. We know that reducing everything to love is a very difficult thing. Many people would say that was the problem with the Second Vatican Council. They did away with all the rules and all the regulations and turned everything into simply love, 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 love. And as if that can be set aside, it's probably the most demanding of all the laws, to love another person in the same way that I love myself, and to have God, particularly Christ, at the center of my life, and put everything else in a proper perspective, not in a secondary, tertiary level of unimportance, but to always keep that focus. This is the God that created me. This is the God who sustains me. And this is the God who pumps oxygen into my lungs every morning so that I can have the day ahead of me to do the work, the prayer, etc., that is expected of me, expected of you. And how can we forget, and yet we do forget, the importance of love as the fundamental law. It's in that law, Jesus even says, this is the fulfillment, the totality, the completion of all of the laws. All of the laws only make sense if they're lived in a spirit of love. Now, where do we go to get a good understanding about the demands of love and the seriousness of love? We turn to the object of all of our adoration, and that is the cross of Jesus Christ. We cannot look at a crucifix. This is what moved St. Francis of Assisi. It was a crucifix that spoke to him. Francis, rebuild my church. That had to be refined in the life of Francis to move away from the particularity of a small little stone building to the immensity of the church herself. But it's always about love. And that is the summarization, the articulation, the compilation, the fulfillment of all the other laws. And when those other laws are not done with the spirit of love, then they mean nothing. They just simply become what they are, laws and regulations. And we look at a crucifix and we realize the most important lesson of all genuine love, and that is, it always entails complete and total self-donation. We cannot look at a crucifix and not realize that what we are looking at is an act of total self-surrender, total self-donation. And if that's easy for you, God love you. It certainly is not easy for you or for me. It has to be lived in with Dave. I don't think it's coincidental that he speaks to us about that act of self-donation from a crucifix, because it's so terribly, terribly difficult. And yet in the end, it is the greatest of all the commandments, the love of God with everything we've got, everything we have, and then to see him in the neighbor and to love that neighbor, because that neighbor is the very corporeal, so to speak, presentation in my life of the very love of God himself. These little statements that we listen to this coming Sunday in the Gospel is the summarization of everything. And when Therese says in her little convent, Toujours l'amour, she has discovered again the essence of everything: legal structures, sacramental life, the institution of the church, society. If we don't have love, then our hearts become filled with acrimony, hatred. We engage in all kinds of devious and self-centered kind of behavior, and we set ourselves up as the judge of all reality and the norm of all morality. And we know where that brings us. It brings us to absolutely nothing. I would ask you again to renew with me this coming Sunday that fundamental call of love that is at the heart of everything we stand for. Because when everything is said and done, that is the fundamental reality. It reminds me of a very famous statement made by Bernard Lonergan. Lonergan was a Canadian Jesuit. And when we were seminarians 1,000 years ago, before the earth cooled, when we were seminarians, we studied St. Thomas Aquinas. Why not? We studied St. Bonaventure in the Franciscan tradition. Why not? We studied Suarez in the Jesuit tradition. Why not? We studied St. Anselm of Canterbury in the Benedictine tradition, all of which were significant contributions to our understanding of the complexity and the beauty of Catholic theology. But in the final analysis, we also studied Bernard Lonergan. He's not an easy man to study, but he was a brilliant, brilliant man, a kind of seminal thinker, a guy that took us back once again to the roots of what really and truly is important. So Lonergan, by the time he died, left a truckload, I mean literally a truckload of honorary doctorates from all the great universities of the world. But someone asked him one time, Father Lonergan, if you could reduce everything you've taught, everything you've written, everything you've preached in your long career as a professor, as a writer, in your ministry as a priest, if you could reduce all of that, what would the statement be? And Father Lonergan spoke British, English. He was Canadian, with that kind of crispness to it. And Father Lonergan said, if I could do everything, reduce everything, it would be the gospel for this coming Sunday. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, all your heart, and all your soul. And love your neighbor as you care and love for yourself. And then they said, Father Lonergan, pause. And in impeccable British English said, everything else is rather negotiable. So that is the message of the gospel that we're listening to on this coming Sunday. It is the message of all the great saints, like the little flower. Let's uncomplicate. Let's engage in self-donation, even though it means a crucifix. And let's discover the meaning and the essence of life. And it's always love of God and love of neighbor. All the other laws are contained within that. Amen. So I will look forward to seeing you the next time around. Thank you.